Wow, the giga whale that moved 20,000 Bitcoin yesterday has now moved 80,000 Bitcoin. And get this, Roger Ver is supposedly behind this move with a probability of 99.9%. And these 80,000 US dollars are now supposed to be transferred to the US Reserve. There are at least some very, very hot rumors about this because Roger Ver might be trying to buy his way out since he is currently facing charges here. I mean, just think about that for a second. Someone holds for 14 years, doesn't move their Bitcoin. They must have a really, really good reason to move those Bitcoins now. The US wanted to build up a strategic Bitcoin reserve anyway. And Bahians has always said that you have to find tax-neutral ways to accumulate Bitcoin. I mean, that would be a massive plot twist. Does this have something to do with the legal case surrounding Roger Ver? That would be absolutely insane if there's any truth to it. We're going to take a look at all these rumors now. We also have Tom Lee, who is now saying that we are still very, very early with Bitcoin. Guys, this is just getting started. Buckle up, the rocket is about to launch, But first, hit the like button below for higher Bitcoin prices, for the Bitcoin price explosion that could be coming if you give enough likes here. We had a slight sell-off, but honestly, Bitcoin is still looking pretty good here. It's not that far to a new all-time high from here. And now let's really take a look at what's going on right now. So what we have here is actually Roger Ver, who apparently moved 80,000 Bitcoin worth 8.8 billion US dollars, which he had held for 14 years, or in other words, had been hodling for 14 years straight. And yesterday, it was just 10,000 Bitcoin. At the beginning here, it was 10,000 Bitcoin, and over the course of the day, it kept increasing with more and more Bitcoin being moved. Then it was 20,000 Bitcoin, then it was 40,000 Bitcoin. Then at one point, it was 60,000 Bitcoin, then it was 70,000 Bitcoin. Exactly, here are the 60,000 Bitcoin, and then here are the 70,000 Bitcoin. And when we hit the 70,000 Bitcoin mark, Sunny from Time Chain Index posted about it here as well. I'm pretty sure like 99.99% that it's Roger Ver. And you should know, Roger Ver is the so-called Bitcoin Jesus, who later got a really bad reputation because he pushed Bitcoin Cash, where they basically wanted to change the block size. His idea, his new vision for Bitcoin ended up failing. The community didn't want it, the community voted against him. Bitcoin Cash more or less failed, and Bitcoin continued to prevail here with small blocks, not with large or faster blocks. It should be said, it's not 100% certain that it's Roger Ver, but according to the source, it's 99.99% sure that it's Roger Ver. And now you also have to quickly understand what this means, Roger Ver, why this is so relevant here, and why it could be a huge deal for the US. Because Roger Ver was arrested in Spain in 2024, based on a US arrest warrant. The US accuses him of tax evasion and fraud in connection with undeclared Bitcoin sales. So this whole thing is already connected to Bitcoin. I think at some point he also gave up his passport or something like that. But since this basically happened before he gave up his passport, he's still criminally liable for tax offenses in the US, if I understood that correctly. Feel free to leave a correction in the comments below if that's not accurate. The accusation is that between 2014 and 2017, he sold Bitcoin worth millions without paying the correct taxes. According to media reports, the US is demanding a large sum as bail or a penalty payment. And here you first have to acknowledge, okay, he didn't declare his taxes properly, he didn't declare his Bitcoin properly, and that's why I always tell you, hey, if you have to pay taxes or you're in a country where you have to pay taxes, always use coin tracking here, the best tax tracking tool currently available on the market. Here you can easily check which coins are tax-free and which coins are not tax-free. Here you can generate tax reports that are also recognized by the tax office, because it makes absolutely no sense to commit tax evasion here. You don't want to end up in a situation like Roger Ver, where you end up in prison somewhere, even though maybe, I don't know, the whole thing is already long past the statute of limitations or something like that. Of course, it doesn't expire too quickly, but you definitely want to protect yourself from that. That's why I'll put a link to coin tracking below. Use the code BTCHotel. Then you'll even get a discount if you decide to get a pro account, but you can also test the whole thing completely free of charge at first. And then we also had the rumors here, questions like, for example, why does this insider who leaked this think that Roger Flair could be behind it? Why does this insider think that Roger Flair moved the Bitcoin? What could be the reason? I mean, one reason could be that he wants to sell the Bitcoin, but that's also a rumor that you see a lot right now, probably some sort of deal with the US government. And why would he make a deal? Quite simply, because he basically wants to buy his way out of imprisonment, because he wants to get out of the proceedings. And with 80,000 Bitcoin, he would have enough assets to possibly pay a hefty fine or settlement, or to make an agreement to avoid extradition. Whether it's actually his wallet hasn't been confirmed. So far, it's pure speculation. There is no on-chain proof yet, and it's also not confirmed that this is being transferred to the US Strategic Bitcoin Reserve. But of course, this was a case like we've seen many times before, where large Bitcoin holdings are confiscated, then basically seized in the US, and then you could say that they're essentially being added to the Strategic Bitcoin Reserve. And we had a similar situation, for example, when Ross Ulbricht was convicted back then, and as soon as he got out of prison, he received a donation here, and that donation was, I can't even remember how much, 80 Bitcoin, 100 Bitcoin, or something like that. Or was it even more? Let me know in the comments. I don't remember exactly how much it was. And a lot of people speculated, okay, he just moved his old Bitcoin addresses and basically gave himself a donation, in quotation marks. And with Roger Ver, it could be the same thing now. Okay, he's accessing his old Bitcoin to sell it here. You just have to realize Roger Ver probably already has enough money. He doesn't really need to sell Bitcoin here because he has so much of it. He can't even spend all of it. But if it comes down to him trying to get his freedom and the US somehow finds out that he has 80,000 Bitcoin, maybe through chain analysis tools or something like that, because obviously if it's just about, hey, he hasn't done anything wrong, then you don't need to do a lot of research. But if someone is on your radar, you might be able to use expensive methods to find out how much Bitcoin they have. And then the US could come along and say, hey man, what's the deal? Hand over your Bitcoin. If you hand them over, you'll either get no jail time or a reduced sentence. Or maybe Roger, who went so far as to say, hey USA, by the way, I just found out I still have an old Bitcoin address with 80,000 Bitcoin on it. Wouldn't you be interested in making a deal with me? I'll send you the 80,000 Bitcoin and in return, I'll be free again and can basically, walk around freely. And yeah, he probably has more than the 80,000 Bitcoin. He probably has 90 or 100,000 Bitcoin or something like that, but I don't know. No idea. Feel free to write down below whether that's true or not. But if he actually has even more Bitcoin and the 80,000 Bitcoin here don't even hurt him, I mean, honestly, I'd also rather pay 80,000 Bitcoin than probably end up in prison. But I don't know. It's tough. It's really hard to put yourself in that position. In any case, it's very, very interesting. You really have to take that in. Even just holding on all this time is quite an achievement, too. I always say HODL here, be careful, because otherwise it could really come back to bite you later if you ever find yourself in a similar situation. Like, you could have spent 80,000 Bitcoin back then, and you did, but if you had just held on, you could have kept it all this time. That's a whole lot of what-ifs right there. Haben hat it können is also completely wrong German. The Bitcoin price hasn't really priced in any kind of massive panic sell-off yet. And yeah, maybe the US wouldn't even sell it at all. The US might just move it into their reserves. The US would probably even be happy about it. So I think these are really, really interesting developments. And now let's actually take a look at Tom Lee, who is also making some really bold statements here. Let's jump right into the clip and see what he has to say. This is really intense.
Yeah, I mean, I think Bitcoin is, if you're buying Bitcoin today, it's still early. I don't think it's too late.
How many times have I tried to explain this to you? Now Tom Lee is saying it too. More and more people are speaking out and saying, yes, Bitcoin is still very, very early. We're still early, and the party probably hasn't even started yet. Earlier, I was at the Electric Love Festival, and of course there was partying and all that stuff. By the way, I'm not involved in that. I don't drink alcohol or anything like that. When people ask like, hey, are you drinking alcohol now? And so on. No, of course I don't do that. I'm just kind of on the sidelines there because we're doing a few podcasts, some recordings, some video shoots. We did some street interviews. That was really wild again. I can say something more about that in a moment, but in any case, we're still very, very early.
So if you have zero exposure to Bitcoin and you feel like you missed it, 95% of investors have zero Bitcoin exposure.
And that's just something you need to know. If someone thinks they're too late to the game, 95% of investors don't own any Bitcoin. And maybe even that number from Tom Lee is too high because he's talking about investors, but there are also people outside of that group. So it's probably less, probably only 2, 3, or 4% of people actually hold any significant amount internationally or overall if you look at it. There are so many people out there. Yeah, there are people who don't even have electricity and who knows what else. So we really are so early. You just can't say that enough.
So you're still way ahead if you're buying Bitcoin today. If you look at Bitcoin wallets, comparing it to the internet, we're back to 1996 levels. Internet went exponential from 1996.
So just think about that for a second. Based on the number of wallets, he says we're basically at 1996, roughly, if you compare it to the internet. And in 1996, there was no social media yet. I don't think there was even, you couldn't just order stuff from anywhere on the internet and so on. Back then, things were really basic, just basic. I can still remember the early days a little bit, but only vaguely because I was still very, very young back then. But at the beginning, it was incredibly difficult to do all this, even with the PCs. I still remember how you used to install things and it was all super, super complicated. And now it's just so easy.
So it's still the earliest days. I think Bitcoin is very useful because in the future, we're not going to be able to trust anything.
Bitcoin will be extremely, extremely valuable here. He's also already said that Bitcoin could go up to 3 million. He always makes very, very bullish statements here. And in the future, you won't be able to trust anyone. And by that, he simply means that central banks will, yes, violate their money monopoly, that states will violate their money monopoly. And that's just important, and it's also, yes, sad when you see that. For example, today I was here at the Electric Love Festival, which is a big music festival. I don't know how many people come there. 20,000, 30,000? No idea. Let me know in the comments if you know. And then you saw, hey guys, they, don't even know the basics. For example, you ask people, hey, what's the Bitcoin price? Yes, at 5,000, at 6,000, at 10,000. Some of them guessed close to 100,000 or so, but I only found one person. He also subscribed to my YouTube channel, who gave good answers. The rest, very, very difficult, I would say, are things like when you ask them, you catch them with a VIP ticket from below for the launch to shoot you up there to pull in the vodka, or do you want to hold Bitcoin? Then, more than half of the people commented something like, yeah, they'd rather have the VIP ticket than a whole Bitcoin. Or also things like, yeah, how do you save your money? Yeah, I don't save any money. I live in the here and now. I just spend everything. I just drink it all away. No awareness at all about all that wasted money. No awareness about Bitcoin. No awareness that saving can actually give you more time here. That means you don't have to work as much anymore. At some point, you'll have so much Bitcoin that maybe you won't have to work anymore. That's also something a lot of people don't understand. They just blow all their money. But Bitcoin is actually a ticket to freedom here. Every Satoshi you buy, every fraction of a Bitcoin you purchase, is another ticket towards freedom. When you have more financial freedom, maybe you don't have to work as much, and at some point, maybe you don't have to work at all, and then you get to do exactly what you really want to do. And that's exactly what you have to understand. Every time, as I said before, because then it's usually said like this, she had 5 Bitcoin back then, somehow drank them all away, and now she doesn't have those 5 Bitcoin anymore, and now she's upset that she wasted those 5 Bitcoin back then. That must have been about 7, 8, or 9 years ago or so. And then I said to her out loud, dude, in 10 years you'll feel the same way again. Right now you're facing the decision, you can throw a party for €1,000, and that's fine, throw a party and all that. Do all that, but maybe also set up a savings plan or something like that on the side. I mean, this is not financial advice. You do with your money what you think is right. I'm just some random weirdo or something anyway. I don't have a clue about anything. I don't even really have a school diploma. I mean, I dropped out of school at some point, and if you just make the same mistake again now, then in 10 or 20 years you'll be in the same spot and you'll say, damn, this sucks. If back then I hadn't blown €1,000 on booze but had bought myself a Bitcoin instead, then those Bitcoins, even if it's not 5 or 10 Bitcoins anymore, maybe it's only 0.1 Bitcoin now, or 0.01 Bitcoin, or even just 0.001 Bitcoin, would now be worth as much as, I don't know, a house or who knows how much, but definitely a whole lot. And that's basically the mistake a lot of people make, which is also what Tom Lee says, we're not too late. No, we're not too late. And if you still want to buy Bitcoin, I'll put a link for you below to 21 Bitcoin. Here you can buy Bitcoin really easily and securely, and with the Cool Bitcoin Hotel, you can still get up to 20% off the fees when buying Bitcoin. Guys, see you soon. See you then. Peace out.